TIL, that Nicolas Cage spent $150 million on a 70-million-year-old dinosaur skull. There's the skull I bought at an auction, and I bought it legally. Here's the MacGuffin. When the Mongolian government said that they needed it back, I gave it to them, but I never got my money back. So somebody at the auction house should be in jail.
In 2007, he was outbidding Leonardo DiCaprio for a 67-million-year-old skull, keeping a $150,000 octopus as an acting coach and building his own pyramid tomb in New Orleans. Nicolas Cage was living like a god. The next, he was drowning in $14 million of tax debt, filming 29 straight-to-video movies just to survive, and suffering nights so dark he couldn't physically get out of bed. What turned a Hollywood prince into a tragic internet meme? The answer isn't in his bank account. It's in the childhood trauma of watching his mother's memories get erased by electroshock therapy. The childhood trauma. Nicolas Cage, who was born Nicholas Kim Coppola on January 7, 1964, in Long Beach, California, entered the world as a prince of Hollywood royalty. On the surface, his lineage was impeccable, as his father was August Coppola, a respected literature professor, and the brother of the legendary film director Francis Ford Coppola, while his mother, Joy Vogelsang, was a talented dancer and choreographer. Yet, behind this glamorous facade of artistic and intellectual prestige lay a chaotic and deeply painful reality that would shape the entirety of his life. The most significant source of Cage's early pain stemmed from his mother's severe and persistent struggles with her mental health. Joy Vogelsang battled a combination of schizophrenia and crippling depression, illnesses that cast a long and dark shadow over the family home. From the tender age of 6, Cage witnessed his mother's frequent and lengthy hospitalizations in psychiatric institutions, where she was subjected to electroshock therapy, a treatment that he later described as having stolen her memories. For a young boy, his mother's presence was tragically inconsistent, as she would effectively disappear for years at a time, leaving an emotional void that could never be filled. He recalled periods where she would enter what he called a Rip Van Winkle state, emerging with no recollection of the time that had passed. A disorienting and frightening experience for a child. When Cage was 12 years old, his parents' marriage finally dissolved, and they divorced, further destabilizing his world. He grew up in an atmosphere thick with fear and silence, learning early on to suppress his own emotions because, as he later told Playboy magazine, expressing them never changed the difficult circumstances he faced. This upbringing with a psychologically fragile mother had a profound and lasting impact on his personality. Cage has openly admitted that these early experiences molded him into a hyper-vigilant individual, someone who is constantly on edge and anticipating the next terrible thing to happen. This state of perpetual anxiety fostered what he termed his super-frenetic energy, a restless drive that compelled him to constantly push himself beyond normal limits. In order to navigate his unpredictable home life, he developed keen observational skills, turning the study and analysis of human behavior into a personal survival mechanism. He needed to be able to read people to protect himself from potential emotional harm. In his search for understanding, he found a strange kinship with the silent film icon Charlie Chaplin, another great artist who had also grown up with a mother who suffered from severe mental illness. This incomplete childhood, marked by the ghost-like presence of his mother and the constant instability around him, planted a seed of enduring pain in Cage's soul, creating a sense of emptiness that he would later try to fill through the most extreme and self-destructive means. The struggle for identity. Upon entering the world of Hollywood, the illustrious Coppola name proved to be both a tremendous advantage and a heavy curse. When he was just 15, while working on a small role in the 1982 film Fast Times at Ridgemont High, he was relentlessly tormented by other actors on set. They would mock him by quoting famous lines from his uncle's films, sarcastically shouting things like, "I love the smell of Nicholas in the morning," a cruel parody of a line from Apocalypse Now. This constant ridicule, coupled with the pervasive suspicion that he was only getting opportunities because of his family connections, ignited a fierce determination within him to forge his own path, one that was entirely separate from the Coppola legacy. It was at this juncture that Nicolas Coppola made the radical decision to symbolically kill his birth name and be reborn as Nicolas Cage. His new surname was a tribute to two very different figures who inspired him. The Marvel Comics superhero Luke Cage, known for his unbreakable skin, and the avant-garde composer John Cage, celebrated for his revolutionary approach to art. This act of renaming himself was a powerful declaration of independence, a rebellion against the very dynasty that gave him his start. However, this decision was not without consequences, as it reportedly angered his uncle, Francis Ford Coppola, and led some influential figures in the film industry to shun him. Feeling like an outcast, Cage became even more resolved to prove his worth not through his lineage, but through raw talent and an unparalleled level of sacrifice for his craft. This drive led him to develop his own unique acting philosophy, which he called nouveau shamanic. The core belief of this method was that for a performance to be truly authentic, the actor must experience real pain and genuine loss, channeling those raw emotions directly into their character. In pursuit of this artistic truth, Cage pushed his body and mind to unimaginable extremes, and his on-set antics became the stuff of Hollywood legend. For his role in the 1984 film Birdie, he wanted to physically comprehend the pain of his character, a wounded war veteran, so he had 2 of his own teeth extracted without the use of anesthesia. He also wore bandages wrapped around his head for 5 consecutive weeks, a decision that resulted in a severe skin infection and acne. His commitment to realism continued in the 1988 cult classic Vampire's Kiss, where, for a particularly bizarre scene, he famously ate 3 live cockroaches on camera. It was an act he would come to regret decades later, admitting in 2023 that it was a cruel thing to do to the insects. For the 1984 film Racing with the Moon, he deliberately cut his own arm to evoke a genuine emotional response for a scene. Even when working within his own family, his methods caused friction. While filming Peggy Sue Got Married in 1986, which was directed by his uncle, Cage independently developed a high-pitched nasal voice and wore prosthetic teeth for his character, a choice that led to major conflicts with his co-star, Kathleen Turner, and with Francis Ford Coppola himself. This unwavering, almost self-destructive dedication to his craft ultimately led him to the industry's highest honor. In 1995, his portrayal of a self-destructive alcoholic screenwriter in Leaving Las Vegas earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. The tragic irony, however, is that the very method that propelled him to this pinnacle of success was also the one that systematically wore down his body and spirit, dangerously blurring the line between the characters he played and the man he was. The pain he depicted on screen was increasingly becoming a reflection of the pain he inflicted upon himself in real life. The peak of fame and the spiral of debauchery. Following his Oscar victory, Nicolas Cage entered the most commercially successful phase of his career, a golden era that cemented his status as a global superstar. Throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, he transformed into one of Hollywood's highest-paid action heroes, commanding a salary of $20 million per film for a string of massive blockbusters. Movies like The Rock, 1996, Con Air, 1997, Face/Off, 1997, and National Treasure, 2004, made him a household name around the world. His transition from a respected dramatic actor to a global action star was complete, and his personal fortune grew exponentially, at one point exceeding the $150 million mark. However, this peak of fame and fortune was precisely when the cracks in his life began to appear and widen into dangerous fissures. While success brought him immense wealth, it also plunged him into a lifestyle that was increasingly out of control. His preparation for his role in the 1992 film Honeymoon in Vegas inadvertently triggered a gambling addiction, which led to nights where he would win or lose millions of dollars at casino tables. His spending habits grew more and more erratic and extravagant. He embarked on an unprecedented real estate buying spree, at one point owning 15 different homes simultaneously. This was not a simple collection of houses. It was a global portfolio of trophy properties that included the historic Midford Castle in England, the formidable Schloss Niedstein Castle in Germany, a 40-acre private island in the Bahamas, and the infamous and allegedly haunted La Laurie Mansion in New Orleans. His acquisitions were not limited to property, as he poured millions into bizarre and rare collectibles. His collection included a Lamborghini that once belonged to the Shah of Iran, a fleet of 9 Rolls-Royce cars, a collection of pygmy shrunken heads, and even a large pyramid-shaped tomb in a New Orleans cemetery, which he purchased for his own future burial. The pressure of maintaining his status as an A-list star also took a severe toll on his mental and physical health. While filming the emotionally taxing movie World Trade Center in 2006, he suffered from severe panic attacks. Tragedy also struck on the set of Con Air, where a stunt accident resulted in the death of a crew member, an event that deeply affected him. While his professional life was soaring, his personal life was a chaotic series of heartbreaks and failures. His relationship with Christina Fulton, the mother of his first son, Weston, ended acrimoniously and resulted in protracted legal battles. This was followed by a string of short-lived and ultimately unsuccessful marriages to actress Patricia Arquette, Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter of Elvis Presley, and Alice Kim. Most notably, his marriage to Erica Koich was annulled after only 4 days. Success had not brought Nicolas Cage the peace he so desperately craved. Instead, it amplified the emptiness he felt inside, trapping him in a destructive cycle of debauchery, loneliness, and the catastrophic financial decisions that would soon bring his empire crashing down. From fabulous wealth to total loss, the financial ruin of Nicolas Cage was not a sudden event, but rather the slow and inevitable result of a toxic combination of reckless spending, terrible advice, and profoundly bad timing. The first major contributing factor was his misplaced trust in his financial manager, Samuel Levin. Cage would later file a $20 million lawsuit against Levin, accusing him of gross mismanagement and leading him down a path toward financial ruin. Levin countersued, claiming that Cage's own uncontrollable and compulsive spending habits were the sole cause of his problems, and that he had been warned to curb his expenditures. The second, and perhaps most devastating blow, came from his overly aggressive real estate investment strategy. Cage had purchased his vast collection of mansions, castles, and private islands at the absolute peak of the market. When the global financial crisis hit and the real estate bubble burst in 2008, the value of his properties plummeted dramatically. He had made the classic investor's mistake of buying high and being forced to sell low, resulting in staggering losses. The final and most pressing problem was the mountain of debt he owed to the IRS. In 2009, the agency filed federal tax liens against him, alleging that he had failed to pay approximately $6.2 million in income tax. This figure, when combined with years of penalties and accrued interest, eventually ballooned to an estimated $14 million. The consequences of this financial collapse were swift and brutal. Cage was forced into a massive sell-off of his prized assets to satisfy his creditors. The European castles, the Bahamian island, the fleet of luxury cars, and even the famous dinosaur skull, which he later discovered was a stolen artifact and voluntarily returned to the Mongolian government, were all liquidated. Many of his homes were foreclosed upon by the banks. To generate the income needed to pay off his debts, from roughly 2010 to 2019, Cage entered a phase of his career where he accepted almost any role offered to him. This led to his appearance in a long series of low-budget, often low-quality films that were released directly to video-on-demand (VOD) services. It is estimated that he starred in at least 29 such movies during this period. His once stellar reputation was severely damaged. The Oscar-winning actor and blockbuster star became a subject of public ridicule, a living meme on the internet, with online searches for his name frequently associated with terms like Nicolas Cage bankrupt and Nicolas Cage broke. The loss was more than just financial. It was a deeply personal and public humiliation. Cage later reflected on his internal state during this time, saying, "I felt like I was disappearing, like I was losing pieces of my life." This collapse was not merely a financial tragedy. It was a devastating blow to the pride and career that he had sacrificed so much to build. The deepest personal tragedy, the inner pain and solitude. Beneath the staggering numbers of his debt and the public spectacle of his asset liquidation lay a much deeper and more profound personal tragedy. Years later, in a candid interview with the television program 60 Minutes, Nicolas Cage revealed the immense psychological weight he carried during that dark period. He confessed to feeling an overwhelming sense of shame and inadequacy, and was particularly haunted by the fear that his son, Weston, would look down on him and lose respect for him as a father. His daily life became a prison of constant fear and anxiety. Every ring of the telephone could be another debt collector, keeping him in a perpetual state of high alert. He described nights when the psychological burden was so heavy that he physically could not get out of bed. The financial collapse had transformed the life of a Hollywood superstar into a living hell, where each day was a desperate struggle for emotional and spiritual survival. Looking back, Cage came to understand that his frantic and compulsive spending was never truly about a love of material possessions. Instead, it was a desperate and misguided attempt to fill the profound emotional void that his unhappy childhood had carved into his soul. The money, the castles, the islands, and the bizarre artifacts were all bricks he used to build a fortress around himself, a wall to protect him from the persistent feelings of pain and emptiness that resided within. But the more he built, the more lost he became. He learned the hard way that material possessions cannot heal psychological wounds, that wealth cannot replace the maternal love he was denied, and that a relentless work schedule cannot soothe a perpetually anxious mind. Cage had tried to outrun his past in every way imaginable, but he eventually had to confront a painful truth about himself. As he once poignantly stated, "I wasn't running from the world, I was running from myself." His greatest tragedy was never about losing his fortune. It was about losing his way on the long and arduous journey to find inner peace. The conclusion: after a grueling decade submerged in debt and starring in films that were far beneath his talent, Nicolas Cage began the slow and deliberate process of rebuilding his life. He made the principled decision to refuse to file for bankruptcy, viewing the repayment of every single dollar he owed as a matter of personal honor and integrity. Through a relentless work ethic, he finally managed to settle his entire debt with the IRS around the year 2022, closing one of the most painful chapters of his life. His comeback was not only financial, but also artistic. In 2021, his performance in the independent film Pig was met with universal critical acclaim. In the film, he played a reclusive truffle hunter searching for his beloved kidnapped pig, a role that showcased his incredible depth and sensitivity as an actor. The film received a 97% positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes and was widely regarded as a spectacular return to form, reminding the world of the extraordinary talent that had once been overshadowed by his personal crises. His performance earned him a Critics' Choice Movie Award nomination for Best Actor. Today, in 2026, his net worth is estimated to be a more modest but stable $40 million. He has embraced a quieter and more humble lifestyle, residing primarily in Las Vegas. He has also found personal stability in his fifth marriage to Rico Shibata, with whom he welcomed a daughter, further grounding him in a new phase of his life. When he reflects on the darkest period of his downfall, Cage speaks with the wisdom of someone who has been through the fire and emerged on the other side. "I once thought that losing everything was a punishment," he has shared. "Now I understand that it was the only way for me to find myself again." He has learned the difficult lesson of forgiveness, especially the importance of forgiving himself for his past mistakes, and has come to accept that one cannot simply outrun grief and guilt. Despite his remarkable comeback, the scars of his past remain. The tragedy of his childhood, the loss of family, and the extreme physical and emotional price he paid for his art are all indelible parts of who he is. Nicolas Cage is far more than just a Hollywood star. He is a living symbol of a uniquely modern tragedy. He is a man who achieved success too quickly, who carried wounds that ran too deep, and who was forced to undertake a painful and public journey to rediscover his own worth. Long after the money and the castles were gone,